Hello, my name is Carl Surrey, and this is a video tutorial for the Facebook group called Fans of Serif Software. Now this tutorial is about managing macros, and this is part 2. In part 1 I looked at how you can use the macros that are already set up by Serif, which I found over here in this bottom section on the tab marked macros. And I showed you various different macros that are already made. I now want to look at making your own macros. So if you have a task that you do very regularly and you get fed up having to keep going through it every time, you can set up a macro to do it for you. Now, one of the ones that you can use is to make a new document, and there's various options, mainly size options, but I want to look at making a new document but also changing the background. This is not something I would do regularly, but it's a simple one to do just to demonstrate. So I'll go back to black and white photography, not that that is important, but along the bottom here you can see there are 5 icons. 4 of them are blanked out. The only one that is actually available to you is a new category, which is how you start to make your own macros. Now before I actually do jump into showing you that, there's one thing that I would highly suggest that you do before you start making a macro, and that is, first off, practice it a couple of times, if not more than a couple of times, because the more you know how to do it quickly, the less likely you are to sort of make minor mistakes, and any minor mistakes you make will be recorded as the macro is made. So the slicker you can do it, the quicker and better the macro will be. So the other part of what you need to do is, apart from practice, is to make some preparations. Now, what I'm going to be doing is making a new image in the size that my camera takes images, which is 5184 by 3456. As you can see, I have one of these on screen, which I made by clicking on File and New. Now the thing about PhotoPlus is that it remembers the last time a command like that was used, and it will already have that as the option that comes up when you click New again. So when I come to make this macro, when I click on New, it will already make it to that size, so I don't have to type in or whatever for the size that I want. It's already preset. So that is one thing that the macro will not have to do because it's already done. And the other one is like the color that I want to make the background. This is currently white, but I want to make it grey. And to do that, obviously you've got to come up here to the foreground color and you click on that to open the color selector. Now, if you were just doing this yourself, sort of on a one-off basis, you may want to click around to find a grey that you liked. Because you may want a dark grey or a light grey or whatever. But if you do that while making a macro, it will record every time where you click. So it will go through that process as well. So if you are going to be picking a colour, already beforehand know the colour you want, and then enter it into the RGB values rather than click randomly on the color selector. So I'm going to want mine to be 127 in all of these. So it should make it the mid grey colour, which is down here in the new box. So as you can see, I now have grey as my foreground colour, and it's already set up. So when I click on the flood fill, it will automatically use the foreground colour, which is grey. So I've made the preparations. So now I just need to start making my new macro. So as I said, the bottom icon down here, the yellow new category folder icon, if you click on that, it asks for a name for the category. So I'm just going to call it Carl's Macros. And now you have another icon that is available to you, which is the new macro, which is the white box with a little cross in it. If I click on that, it will now want a name for that macro. So I'm just going to call this new grey I'll just call it setup and then click OK. So now that we have a new category and a new name for the macro, all we need now is the different steps and tasks for that macro to do. Now in the bottom we now have some more of these icons that are available. You have the delete one over here. If you don't like how it's going, you can just delete it. And we have the start recording and the play button. When you click on the start recording, it does exactly what it says. The program will start recording wherever you click on and move, and it will remember that. And once you click on that, this button over here will then become available, which is stop recording. And then it will stop and save all the different tasks, and then you can just click on play to test it. So what I will do now is I will click on start recording. What I'll do is I'll get rid of that one there, because like I said, I'm going to be making a new file. So I will click on start recording and then go to file, new, and like I said, it's already set up in the size that I want. Just click OK, and because it is grey is already foreground colour, I can click on flood fill and then just press stop recording. So if I now look at that macro, it has I actually accidentally clicked the flood fill twice. I should be able to delete that one. So yeah, so we just got the make a new file and flood fill. So if I now delete that and I highlight the new grey setup, click play, and there you have it. It has made the file that I want, in the size that I want, and in the colour that I want. So that is a very simple macro, just using 2 steps, and made easier because I'd set things up beforehand. So I will clear this all away and set PhotoPlus back to the default settings, and I will try a much harder one. So I'll be back in a little while. Okay, let's get on with making this new macro. The harder macro has a lot more steps in it, and I'll have to be checking my notes a couple of times to get the colours that I want correct. So I may get a little bit distracted while making this, which I'm very sorry about if that happens. Right, I have done a little bit of setting up. I've put the foreground colours back to their default black and white. I've loaded in an image that I want to make this macro for. Now this macro is to make a split tone image. A split tone is changing using two colours. In my case it's going to be blue and yellow as a gradient to alter how an image looks. This was used in a split tone gradients written tutorial, which it can be downloaded from the file section of the Facebook page. I've also put this back onto black and white photography on the macro tab here, just to show you that if you want to make a new macro, it will not let you add to ones already made by Serif. But if I go to the ones I made earlier, which I called Carl's Macro, there's the one I made, the new grey setup, but you can now make another new macro. So you can only make a new macro in the category that you make yourself, not in one set up by Serif. So what I'm going to do is just click on new macro, and I'm going to call this one split tone blue yellow, and click OK. So like before, we've now got the recording button, which is now available. But before I rush off and actually start this, there's one last bit of preparation I would like to do. And what I do want to start the macro with the default black foreground, white background. But just in case some future date down the line, if I use this macro, these aren't set correctly, it will use whatever I had it set up at that time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deliberately change that. So the first part of my macro will be to put these back to the default settings. So whatever it is set on down the line, when I reuse this, the first thing it would do is reset the colors. So I will start recording and then come up and reset the colors. Then I'm going to add a levels adjustment layer. Now for this you would move the white and the blacks into the histogram that suits your picture, but on this particular picture I will leave it where it is, and then I will then add another adjustment layer, this time the gradient map, because this is where you needed the black and white settings up here, because this will give you the black and white gradient map. So I'll click inside here, and then the black stop here on the left, I'm going to move this into 4%. Then I'm going to click on the midtones one and make that 60%. I will click roughly about here to add another black stop, but this time I'm going to change the colors, and I'll just click into there, and I will add the colors of the blue that I want to make. And so the first one is 16, second one is 27, and the blue is 90. Then click OK. So as you can see, the gradient now goes from black to blue to white. I'm going to leave the white stop where it is, but I am going to add another white stop and make that location 75, and then I'm going to change the color of that to the yellow that I want, and the yellow is 248 212 in that one, and the blue is 76, and click OK, and then click OK to close that one down, and then I can stop recording. So if I now look at this, the task that this has made, there is only 3 actually. When I did this in PhotoPlus X6 for the written tutorial of this, I ended up with 36 tasks, which was each and every one of the adjustments. So it looks like they've improved the macro making for X8, maybe even in X7, which I never got, which is a good thing. It does probably mean that what I said at the beginning, especially if you've got the newer versions of PhotoPlus, you can probably, jump around and try and pick a colour you like. But I do think it is still better to pre-plan ahead, find the colours you like, and prepare things better. But this has made this much easier. Now, as you can see, the first one was reset the colours. Then there's a new adjustment layer, which was the levels, and then the new adjustment layer, which was the gradient map. Now, I will just pick a different picture. Let's try that one to see, how this works. So I've highlighted this new one I've just made, and I'll just press play. And there you go, it has changed that automatically to that split tone blue and yellow. Now what I can also do is, if I click on this adjustment one here, and you can do insert pause, which was the stop one which I mentioned earlier, I can add a message, which is, I'm going to put, if I could spell, levels adjustment layer, move blacks and white stops inwards to touch histogram edges. Now I'm going to click allow continue, so it will give you the option to continue, which I can't see why that isn't automatic, but so I'll click OK, and as you can see, that I actually wanted this before that layer, so I'll see if I can move that to there. Yes, I can. So now when I do this, it should stop, and then I will add the adjustment tool in for that particular layer by putting an icon there. So what I'll do is I'll undo this, and then go back to the undo that, go back to the split tone, and then run that again, and then that stop comes up, which tells me what to do, because if it's down the line I may forget what it is that I need to do at this point. So I click continue, and then the levels histogram comes up, and I don't really need to move this on this particular picture, so I can just click OK and it will continue and make the image. So let's just try it on one last image, which is this church. So I'll just run it again. Got the stop message and click continue, and I will just move this in. I didn't really need to, but I'll just move it in. Maybe make it a little bit lighter, and then click OK. And then it can continue on making the image for me. So that is a much more complicated in the preparation and setting up and execution of a macro. And I'm hoping that showing you the fairly easy one and the more advanced macro, how you can make your own macros to suit whatever it is you need. And like I said, you can always, I've always put a stop in before the adjustment layer for the gradient, add in the gradient tool icon there, and then you could change the colors to suit whatever it is you want to do. So that is, I think, the end of this tutorial. I hope you've learnt something over the two, and thank you and goodbye.